Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of your Slightly Mighty podcast, the local podcast dedicated to Charleston's vibrant and growing music scene. My name is Hop, your host and humble facilitator. This will be our fifth Slightly Mighty episode and our second Artist Spotlight show. I want all of you listening to know that it's been a real pleasure and privilege for me to get a chance to host these conversations for you. Also know that your suggestions continue to be appreciated and helpful, so please keep sending them along to hopturn@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, and share. But above all, please share us on whatever media platforms you inhabit, as it is the fastest way for the show to continue to grow. Today's conversation is being hosted by Fairweather Studios on James Island. Much appreciated to Omar for letting us come in here and record where the actual CD that we'll be talking about, or album, was recorded in, which is great. So thank him for that. A few show notes I'd like to touch on before we begin. Some of you have wondered why I'm choosing to record on location. Simplest answer is that I own two very protective and very loud dogs who do not place the same value on human safety and quality broadcasting as this audience does. What this means is that from time to time you might hear less than studio quality sounds in your earbuds. Personally, I like these little details, and I hope you will as well. However, you can click on the clip link that is provided on each show's Spotify episode page if you want to see a brief location video clip for each show. Which leads me to another comment I received. Many of you have asked me about longer YouTube video versions of the show. I tried a few things out, but ultimately, I feel that the look of a one-camera angle show is just not very interesting and maybe even a little distracting to the overall conversation. Please feel free to share your opinions about that with me in the comments or just email me directly. As a one-man operation, my resources and time are limited, but we are growing and learning here, so I'm sure it'll happen eventually. And lastly, a couple listeners have asked me why I released the Slightly Mighty podcast through Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and YouTube. There really isn't a reason. If you want to hear it somewhere else, just send me a link and I will get it there. So let's get down to business. Sitting down with me today is singer and guitarist Malin Wagnon. Malin performs with several projects around town and has just released a long-awaited studio album entitled Suffering under the name Malin Wagnon and the Better Angels of His Nature. Ever since I heard this album, I knew I wanted to have him as a guest on the show to talk about his life and music, this album, and what's next for this local troubadour. Welcome to the show, Malin.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, cool. So, a little bit about your backstory. I would like to know more about how Malin became Malin.
Well, okay, let me see if I can do this in a somewhat abbreviated form. So I was born in El Paso, Texas. I moved as a younger child to the Birmingham, Alabama area, and was raised up with a musical mother and a musical father. They weren't professionals. My mom could play piano pretty well, and my dad was actually, he did some theater, which is weird and out of character for him. They had me late. So he was, he was, I think he was in his late 40s when he had me.
Okay.
And so being, and he was a cop, which was another wrinkle. But for all that, he was kind of not an artsy guy, but he loved movies, he loved music, and he was a great singer. He really knew, he loved all the big band kind of thing, and he would do the, Louis Armstrong, Sinatra kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
He could phrase. He could act. It's really wild. It's something I've thought about a lot as I've gotten older and look back on it. Like his phrasing, most people who aren't like actual musicians or don't do it to, with any degree of regularity, they tend to sing a song like the song. You know what I mean? Like if most people, they
keep
sing
it in
along.
The box.
Exactly. They just sing whatever's there.
Sure.
But my dad, I remember I would like hear him, we'd be listening to AM radio and there'd be Nat King Cole on, and he would like slur things and hold things back and and then come in and speed it up to catch up, and it was all just very intuitive, and I think it really had a big impact on me. So anyway, that's probably not of any interest, but the
sure it is. I asked you specifically for your backstory.
It's of interest to me, I guess so. So
you can blame me.
So as a kid, I started playing music fairly early. I was pretty involved in the little Southern Baptist church in the town where we were. So I always say that kind of my formative influences were the Bible, and my grandmother was a teacher, a former teacher, so Shakespeare was real big with her.
Oh, cool.
And then like AC/DC, because the neighbor,
Nice.
the neighbor next door, he was older than me, and I remember during the summer I would go over to his house, and he'd wake up, and the first thing he'd do is play Hell's Bells, or he'd play Sabbath.
That's a good Sunday song
Mob
to wake
Rules,
up to.
right? Yeah. So he would like really, so those are the things that kind of were in the mix. And I played in bands in high school, and I had sort of an aborted attempt at higher education in the early '90s, and then I played in Birmingham for a while, and then I moved here in 2001, right before the world fell apart. And on the advice, I'd never been here before, and it was on the advice of some friends of mine, Jen and Matt Hamrick. Matt's actually played around for years. And they were like, "Oh, you got to come. You can make some money. It's good. It's a good scene. You can get gigs." I was like, "Okay." I had kind of burned some bridges, and things weren't ideal in Birmingham. And then it ended up that the lady who's now my wife, then my girlfriend, we'd actually separated for a while, but we kind of started talking again right before I was going to move. And I was like, "Well, why don't you come?" And yeah. So
you baited her in with a good city.
Well, I don't know. It's really funny because anybody who knows us knows that we are like the Irish Gaelic poster children when it comes. We're extremely pale, like translucently pale. We're not beach people at all.
Yeah, I'm not really either.
So how we ended up, it's kind of like people are like, "Oh my God, you're my sluttish out of the beach," and we're like, "Yeah, we never really do that too much."
That's skin cancer waiting there for you, right?
Totally, yeah, totally. So I started playing out pretty much immediately once I moved here. And
what were some of those early bars you played at? I've been asking people a lot about the older bars. Some of them aren't around anymore.
Wow. So I used to play at this place called A Light Affair that was down on Calhoun Street, I think. It was like, it was like the sort of, it's where that pharmacy is now. Where Millennium Music used to be?
When I moved here, that's what it was.
Okay.
The music store,
So Millennium Music was on the other corner, if you're looking at it from the park.
Okay.
So I guess on the corner at King. That would be, yeah. So anyway, I played there a lot, solo acoustic. I played at, I did get to play once at the original Cumberland's, which was cool.
Yeah.
Nobody was there, but it was still, I got to say I did it, and that was neat. And I used to play, So I had joined up Charlie Thompson, the pedal steel guru.
Yeah, he plays in Solid Gold Country. Is that right?
He does.
Yeah.
And he plays
great.
with like the Blue Dogs.
Yeah,
he plays with everybody.
Yeah.
And basically, he's like the guy that people call, which they should, because he is awesome and a great person. He and I were in a band that was kind of like I guess what now would be referred to as like a dad rock kind of bar, pub band. Full on 4-piece. I played guitar and sang, and he played guitar, and there was a drummer and a bassist, and we were doing like Some Kind of Wonderful and that kind of stuff,
Nice.
What was that place? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm not going to be able to think of it. Out on Sullivan's, Burt's.
Oh yeah,
Burt's.
I played
Burt's
Burt's back in the day.
Yeah,
What a
room.
You say Burt's now, and people think of Folly.
Yeah.
I remember that. When I first moved to town, that's where I played with a guy named Mitch Wyman. Do you know him?
I know that name. Yeah,
he used to play back in the day. He was buddies with Pork Chop.
I don't know if I know
player.
Pork Chop. How did I miss Pork Chop?
You won't. You'll see him. You'll meet him
someday.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how you spend all this time playing out, and in Charleston especially, it's such a weird. Charleston, I listened to the shows that have been released, and I know Zach and Corey were kind of talking about the Charleston thing. And it really, I've talked to a lot of people, and I think it's kind of unique. Just this whole thing of like, hey, I booked a gig, and you just sort of go down your list and go, available, and you never know exactly where where the slots are gonna land, you know. But it's almost always compelling. I mean, it's like
keeps it fun too.
It does. I love it. I think that's so cool. I do too. But even after all that and all these years, I mean, hell, you and I didn't play together until relatively recently, like the last year.
Like last year, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, which is crazy. It's like because when I said, "Oh yeah, I finally got to play with Hop," several people were like, that was your first time playing with him?"
That's why I heard the same thing.
Yeah.
You don't know that guy?
It's like, I know. I'm sorry. But anyway,
that just speaks to the quality of this town a little bit too.
It does. There's a lot of firepower,
and there's a lot of places to play. And like when I was talking to Hans, the show before last, he was talking about how there's the competition in this town is really with yourself in some ways. You don't really have to feel like you have to outcompete people for gigs or positions in bands or whatever. There's plenty of work for everybody at all kinds of levels.
It's so true.
Like, you know?
And like there have been times where I've been frustrated by Charleston and kind of gotten the itch and want to go maybe somewhere else. But then I think about it and I'm like, where else am I going to go where I can have the thing that I love to do as a side hustle, make enough money to make it viable to sustain it.
Yeah, I understand that completely.
And also, have such a huge variety of people that are going to be by and large cool. I mean, it's amazing how few assholes there are.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
It's like there's.
Yeah, I look forward to any. I mean, I like to be surprised when I show up. I get hired for a gig. I show up. It's like.
Yeah.
Some of these people I haven't played with in a while. It's last weekend, but it's always like you say, it keeps you interested.
Yeah, and they're almost always like it's sort of remarkable that most of them are really cool people as well, except for the following, whose names I'll read now.
This has all been a big revenge trip. Hey man, that's fine.
Album schmalbum.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's time to name names.
So your music covers, in my opinion, a lot of ground. You have a lot of different topics that you're discussing, and when you were talking about your upbringing, that's kind of why I was asking that right off the bat, because I can kind of hear some of that in this album, and hopefully we'll get into that as we talk about the album a little bit. But
yeah,
what are some of the sources for some of the stories you're telling in the album?
I mean, I don't have a great answer for that.
Okay.
It's really just I mean, I try. They all have specific. I relate them to specific things, but then again, most of them aren't about necessarily one thing in particular. Right. You know what I mean? It's not like, this is a song about my feelings about. Or
so
whatever,
it's not just one equals one. You're kind of like.
It's kind of because the way I tend to write is I do what somebody that's a lot smarter than me came up with, this composting, where you basically you just write a lot of bullshit every day. You just sit down and for 30 minutes you just write bullshit. Okay. And lyrics I'm talking about here.
Okay. And
or whatever, words. And
that's where you start from.
Yeah, and so the idea is that, without, no shit, no flowers. That's the idea. Right. Is that, you every now and then you'll get a line, and that line you're like, oh, I like that, and you'll try it in this song, it doesn't really work there, and you put it back in and you try it. And so there's a lot of that on this record where it's like, finally, this verse, this line, this idea kind of found a home. There are some things on it that are pretty explicitly about one thing, but I tend to like things that people can listen to and kind of have their own version of it, and it's not necessarily so spelled out.
Okay. Art, that's what art is, right?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
It's kind of your subjective interpretation of what you're looking at or listening to. So,
but I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's not, and I mean, I'm going to sound like an old man saying this, but I mean, it's I feel like now there's not as much of that. I feel like now.
Oh, you mean in pop music or popular music?
Yeah, just kind of in music in general. It's just kind of like I even in really good music that I like, and I will fully admit, I don't keep up with things like I should. Mm-hmm. People, thank God I have younger people that I play with that will kind of hip me to things from time to time. And every now and then there'll be something that I'll immediately be like, oh, yeah. and it'll kind of catch me. But for the most part, it's like I've got too much to catch up on. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's still Miles Davis records I haven't spent enough time with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's kind of like, am I really going to listen to Fucko and the Fuckheads? Just so I can,
Right.
just because it's new.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that's a shitty thing to say, but I mean, it's I do think that one of my complaints is that if I'm being the get off my lawn guy, is that I feel like more and more things are not quite as open. I'll give you an example. Today, my daughter and I were out because we're dumb, we went out in the Christmas melee.
And we're brave. All right. I'll look at it.
And we stopped and got some lunch, and we were sitting in this place, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds came on. And, I was sort of, gratified to hear like people all around us of all different ages and demographics were kind of singing along and nodding and whatever. And I was like, to my daughter who's 16, I was like, isn't it weird that this was like a hit? That there were like girls your age and younger.
Yeah.
There were like 13-year-old girls and boys and whatever that were listening to this music and really being like, this is great. And I was like, is there anything that's like this now? And she was like, no.
Yeah.
She was
there's not the touchstones of the past.
Yeah.
That's a long conversation there as to why
totally,
that would be.
Totally.
I think there's a lot of headwinds against those kinds of notions in our society these days.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's like whenever, I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole we probably don't want to go down, but
this is a rabbit hole type podcast, my friend.
I feel like that the big thing, the best friend that we have when it comes to the arts, whether we're creating it or enjoying it as a participant, as an audience member, is limitations. That's the best friend you've got, because when you have no limits, speaking for myself, it's easy to fall into option paralysis.
Define limits. What do you mean exactly by that?
Okay, well, to take an example of maybe from a listener's perspective. When I was a kid, my parents weren't, wealthy people, or, even we did all right. We weren't like in the gutter or anything, but I mean, there wasn't a lot of money. And so for me to get an album, to buy an album, it was kind of a big deal.
I see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And so, like,
you really hoped every track was the best, because that's what you're gonna have.
Yes, and but even more so, like, okay, going back to Miles, like, I read Miles' book, his autobiography, when it was released in the 80s, before I ever heard a note of Miles Davis's music. I read an excerpt of it in a magazine, and I was like, this is amazing.
Cool.
I got the book. I read it. I didn't know who these people were. Charlie Parker and Roy Haynes. Who are they? I don't know. No idea.
Yeah.
But then I read on, and I got to the part where he was in the late 60s and early 70s, and he was like, I was listening to Sly and Jimi Hendrix and James Brown, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I know them. I've heard them before. And I thought, well, man, if I'm going to get into Miles, that's where I want to get in, right? Mm-hmm. And so people always laugh at this, especially people who are real jazz people always laugh. But the very first Miles album I ever got was Bitches Brew.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, right?
I think it's my favorite one.
Oh, it's hard for me to pick, but that is absolutely...
Yeah, it's great.
It's amazing.
Actually, that album and Dark Maggots are my two favorites.
That's another brilliant one. But the thing is like, remember, at this time I was 14.
Oh, nice.
You know what I mean? I was like, I was very young.
Yeah.
I had no frame of reference for this. And I remember the thing that always sticks out to me is that I remember in the book, he said, the critics, they said that I was selling out because I was trying to go for a pop audience. Yeah. And I was like, this was his bid for pop currency with the young people, I
wouldn't have told Miles anything.
Here you go, kids.
Wow. Yeah,
it's just so absurd.
Pump that on the way to school.
Yeah, exactly, Oh, Dad, have you heard the new Bitches Brew? It's boss. It's really
super boss.
Such a groove. Wow. So anyway, I say all that to say that I did not understand it at all. And I can't say, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I was immediately like, yeah, I get this. This is totally,
right.
I was baffled by it, you know? It was not at all what I was expecting. But I couldn't return it. Yeah. And so I had to spend some time with it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So it forced me to, like, rather than just being like, oh,
kind of write it off immediately, yeah.
Because now if I send my kid something, I go, hey, check this out. She's like, da, 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 da. Nope, zoop, and it's gone. Like it never happened. You know, there's no reason for her to invest the time because there's too much stuff out there.
Yeah, she just move on.
Just instantly available.
Swipe left or whatever they say.
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And so that's... from a listener's perspective, that's where I think limits can be your friend.
Yeah.
And then from a creative perspective, I think much the same thing, that the best people, the people that we all love and revere the most, are typically working within some kind of a framework that they've set up for themselves. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing years ago, like I think it was a Zen story where there are these 3 Zen monks, and they're in a museum and they're looking at a picture on the wall, and one of them says, you know, it is colors, and the other one says, no, it is canvas, and the third one goes, no, it's a frame. It's a frame.
Wow.
That's the whole thing, man, is that framework that you build up around it, and you say, okay, within this, these are the tools I have, these are the skills I have, these are the people I have, this is the equipment I have, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
And that's really, and I say that as someone that didn't really fully accept that or capitalize on that or work from that until really pretty late.
I actually kind of agree with that myself in my own playing.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I think that I was kind of in the do what you will kind of mentality until in the last 10 years, maybe, or even 5, honestly, as far as like a focused effort to show up and like make the song or the gig, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. Make it match.
Like you're doing right now. I mean, no, seriously, like this thing, rather than saying, well, what is that? The P4, maybe I should get the P7 because it's got this, and well, my headphones aren't really, or oh, this mic, maybe I should use, it's like, no, make something, do something.
Do it.
Don't fucking sit around, you know, don't sit around. And thankfully I was punk adjacent enough that while I never played punk music per se, I spent a lot of time listening and a lot of time with people who did.
Yeah, me too.
And that whole DIY
we probably have a lot of similarities.
I'm sure,
yeah.
But you know, that was one of the things, was just like, well, we're just going to do it, you know? Mm-hmm. We're just doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm chagrined that, like, with the record, it took me this long to finally just be like, fuck, just do it. Just do it. You know, because there's always like a list of excuses.
Right.
As long as my arm, you know, it's like, well, but I got this and this guy and this thing, and I'm this and the kids and this, and it's finally like, just fucking come on.
And how does it feel?
It feels great. It feels like I mean, I have children. My wife actually did all the heavy lifting with them, but when it came to bringing them into the world, but I would imagine it's something maybe like along those lines. That feeling of just kind of like, wow, okay, well,
right. Here it is. Right.
Here it is. And after all that angst and worry, do we have enough money? And are we smart enough? Are we good enough people? Do I want to do this? Am I selfish? Am I prepared? You just do it, and then you've got this thing, and you're like, oh, well, here it is. And then it's a part of your life, and it becomes a part of your life and part of what happened, and it leads you to other things.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And don't rely so much on, like you were saying before we started, you were telling me about how you've gotten some feedback about the show, you know.
Sure.
And I mean, sometimes feedback is helpful, but then there comes a certain point where it's just kind of like, you know, okay, thank you. I'm turning you off now. You know what I mean? You have to, again, frame.
Yeah.
You got to set that framework and just kind of say, okay, I appreciate it. I hear it. I see it. I'll take it into consideration. That's not what's important to me.
Let me bounce this idea off of you then.
Okay.
So basically, one of the things that I'm kind of, as I turn 50 next month, which is part of the reason why I started this whole podcast, is I'm kind of like thinking, what have I been doing majority of my life? You know, what's the point? And I don't mean that in a bad, negative way. I mean, what's the point in a good way? You know? I guess I've just been kind of like thinking about the next 10 years and trying to maintain this. I guess in terms of like judging from what I want to do with my time is more important to me now than ever before. You know, I just want to make sure that whatever it is has some kind of value to me, and somebody else can't tell you what that is.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
It's up to you. You know,
no matter how much you might want them to.
Yeah, right.
Because that's the other side of that. It's easy enough to think, you know, I don't want somebody telling me what to do, and that's true, and that happens. But then there's that other thing of like, oh God, when is somebody going to tell me what to do here? You know?
Right.
I mean, I turned 52 this year, and you know, the whole creation of the record was very much a similar thing. Where I was like, I mean, there's nothing worse than an asshole quoting himself, but I'm going to do it here. And there's a line in one of the songs, the last song, which is really it's exactly what we're talking about. You know, that whole idea of like, you know, I don't want to lie forever in the cold and the dark. I don't want to go to heaven, never left my mark on anything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, gather you rosebuds, man, because we ain't fucking guaranteed a thing.
Nope.
And, you know, and I think that's a gift that you start to get, especially when you start to cry. I think once you kind of hit the mid to late 40s and then cross over into 50s, you've seen enough. We've lost enough people, you know, and family and friends, and you know, and you just see how precious it is, man.
Every second.
Yeah, you really do have to make the most of it.
Well, thanks for that.
Where's the gong? I need to ring the gong. Oh,
yeah, no doubt.
Tell me more, wise master.
All right, so let's shift gears here.
Okay.
I have a question that comes in from a couple episodes back.
From Hans Wenzel, Wenzel.
Where do you find inspiration in your songwriting?
Where do I find inspiration for songwriting? Honestly, I don't even. For me, it's never been something that I'm the least successful at it, the more I actively look for it, if that makes sense. It's much better for me to have developed kind of develop my antenna a little bit to where somebody will say something, or I'll hear something, or I'll see something, and I'll be like, ooh, file that away. And now that I'm getting older, plug it into the goddamn phone immediately.
Yeah.
You will probably not remember it, you know? So that's really more, I mean, it's like the easy thing to do is like life, man, life inspires me. But I mean, really it's more, I get inspired by, obviously by other musicians and other art, but more and more, it's just like, I get inspired by people. One of the things that I have learned is that collaboration, it's just key. It's just the best. I mean, there's a lot of like purely solo stuff that I love.
Okay, let's zero in on that then. So collaboration.
Yeah.
What does that look like to you? Because I know that you are a singular artist. Your name's on the bill.
Which I hate. I never wanted it. I've tried to come up with so many band names.
I hear you.
And they never stick. Never. Never. I'll be like, this is it. This is the one. I never wanted to be the Malin Wagnon show.
I got you.
I never, and I don't say that to be like, because I'm such a cool guy. I'm just, it makes me feel weird. It just, it feels odd.
Okay.
I was in bands, when I was a kid, it was a band thing. You had a band. And so it's taken me a long time to just finally be like, okay, yes, I'll just do it for the sake of convenience and ease. I'll do it under my own name. Having said that, the collaborative thing that's probably a better answer to Hans's question. More specifically, is I get inspiration from other musicians.
Okay.
I mean,
the collaboration process.
The collaboration is so key because I have just found that, and especially as I get older, it's like, how many more like strum, sing, here's some words songs am I going to write before I rip my own fucking eyes out?
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm tired of this.
There's no need to do it all yourself, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, and it's just going to be better,
Right.
There's a great thing that Trey from Fish said in between jams. He was talking about, he said this over the mic. It was when they were doing their Cow Funk era in like 97. No, anyway, I don't know when he said it, but he was like talking about their stage setup, and he was talking about how deliberate their stage setup is and how nothing is accidental, nothing is left to chance. It's all very purposeful. And one of the things he said is that he deliberately has separate speakers rather than having one mix where the band comes through. He's got a speaker for Mike, and he's got a speaker for Fish, and he's got a speaker for Page. And they're all staggered slightly so that when they're improvising, if he starts to feel like he's like, oh, I'm just kind of going,
yeah, right.
I made a jack off motion there, then
I'll make sure to use this video for the...
yeah. That's what he did. Actually, he didn't do that. I'm filling that in. But anyway, that's what he meant. When he was saying, when I feel like I'm just starting to kind of, just be aimless, I never run out of ideas because I've got 3 guys feeding me ideas constantly.
Right.
So if I'm
that interplay is what Fish is all about.
I can step over and get into Page land for a while, and I'll hear, and I'll kind of react to that. I'll grab that, then I'll move it over into Mike land and sort of embellish it from there. And before you know it, I'm doing something that's really cool that I would have never thought of on my own. Now that is the capital T truth right there. That's what it's all about to me.
Okay, that's what it's about on a stage. But when you go into a studio environment, what does collaboration look like in that way? I mean, are you bringing in like the finished song and you're saying, here it is, and they're writing their parts to it, or? That's
the way this one worked.
Okay.
I mean, and finished in quotes. I mean, it was... so I guess this would be a good time to kind of talk about like how it sort of generated, because it's it sort of illustrates exactly what we're talking about. So my initial vision for the record was that I wanted, some of the listeners, I don't know if you're familiar, but they're the Cowboy Junkies.
Yeah.
You remember Cowboy Junkies?
Yeah.
And they had that record Trinity Sessions, where they did it all to a stereo mic. It's like their biggest record. It's got them doing Sweet Jane and whatever on it. It's a great record.
Oh, but that came out. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they did it in a church.
They made a big, huge, came out of church. They made a big, huge deal about the old school recording.
Totally, because it was just one mic, one stereo mic, and they all set up around it, and that was it. And so I was thinking, okay, one of those many excuses I mentioned earlier is lack of funds, and so because I'm not great with money, and also because I have children and all that kind of stuff.
You're adulting.
Way too many dogs and all that kind of thing. So I thought, well, this would be an economical way to do this. And so my initial vision that I approached Omar with was, okay, let's take that concept. At the time I was living in Ridgeville in this old turn of the century farmhouse that was literally falling into the earth, but it was real vibey and funky and cool. And it had this dining room that sounded amazing, like really amazing. And so I said, let's do that, bring that here. And I think he was actually the one that said, oh, we ought to do it to tape. I've got a tape thing. We could do it that way. I was like, very well, we'll do that. And so my whole vision initially was a combination of like the Cowboy Junkies in terms of recording, and then basement tapes. That kind of like squeaky.
Basement tapes, are you talking about the
Bob
Grateful
Dylan.
Dead? Or Bob Dylan? Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Bob and the band.
Gotcha.
Where they literally recorded in their basement. And it's like there's, it's not like pristine audio, know. But it's vibey as hell, and it's great.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I was thinking, it'll be squeaky and creaky, and there'll be people will drop things, and the dogs will bark, and the kids will walk through, and it'll just all be part of the thing. So I was thinking of a real back porch kind of folky kind of thing. Yeah. That was my initial
It's immediately
vision.
why I was into this album too. As I told you before we started recording, is I heard the recording quality of it, and the songs are amazing, and we'll talk about that. But I mean, the fact that it is not so overly produced and smoothed out, and it's just a beautiful statement from people who are playing in a room at a time, a given time. I like it.
Well, thank you. And that is 100% all credit for that goes to the band, because what ended up happening was I reached out. I knew I wanted Alan Schmidt to do it. He and I have played together for years. He's Alan on bass, and Whit Algar that I've played with in Sideshow Americans and a bunch of other settings many, many times. I knew I wanted him. Jeff Davis and I had played together. Jeff's for anybody that doesn't know, from Guilt Ridden Troubadour and other projects. And then the wild card was the drummer. And just to be honest, most of the people that I played with the most just weren't available. So this was in 2021. So it was, COVID. We're still in the COVID era, starting to loosen up a little bit, but it's still fairly locked down. And I had played with Marshall Hudson, who's with Susto, in Sideshow. And we had played a few pickup gigs together, but we didn't really know each other very well. I mean, I liked him a lot, and he's obviously he's a great drummer. I knew he was a great drummer.
His tempo on the album is like, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, I had no idea. I didn't really understand how holy shit great he was. But so I had all these people in place, and God bless them, they all agreed to do it. They agreed to do it on spec. They said, let's just do it, and we'll sort it out in the in the mix later, when it comes to any kind of compensation or anything like that. And Omar was excited about it. He was like, well, I've never done anything like this before, so I'll just sort of treat this as an experiment. So let's just do it. So everybody was game. We're going to do it.
And that's Omar from Fairweather.
Yes, Omar Colon. And so we started rehearsing, and we did a lot. We did several months of pre-production. And one of the things that quickly started happening was, because I didn't come in I think there were maybe 3 things I can think of on the record where I told somebody, please play this exactly. I had demos, but most of them were pretty bare bones. Most of them were just acoustic, just me and an acoustic. And so I really wanted them to do their thing. That's something that always mystifies me.
They brought their skill set.
You hire good people and let them do good stuff. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the thing. Let them do. Who the hell am I to tell Marshall Hudson how to play the drums? Well, then they all started to contribute this thing, and what started off as this creaky kind of back porch thing suddenly turned into this thing that was much more, and I haven't found a good word for it, orchestrated a little bit, maybe a little more composed. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some parts in there where it really surprises you where the arrangements go.
Totally, and that's them.
It seems like it's sparse in some places where it needs to be, and then it's lush in some places where it has to be. If that makes any sense.
That's
kind of what came to my mind when I was listening to it. Let's listen to a little bit of a song to kind of give listeners an idea about what we're talking about here.
Cool.
This is the song called "The Flood." Would you like to introduce the song anyway?
Sure. So "The Flood" is one that one of the newer ones that I had around, and on this one it's extra special because I got my old friend and longtime musical partner, Corey Jarrett, to come in. He plays banjo on it. And James Anderson, who used to live in Charleston. And I think he moved to Portland. I don't know where he is now. He moves around a lot, but he's a fantastic violinist / fiddler. I guess he was probably more in his fiddler hat for this. But yeah, it's basically sort of another perspective on the Noah story.
And a place was prepared, and they gathered in pairs, all the beasts and the birds of the air. And they brought them aboard the great ark of the Lord, in accordance with his holy word. And the rain from on high lifted them to the sky, for mercy did cry, but no mercy was found, and the heathen all drowned in the waters that rose all around, all around, all around. In those waters no mercy was found, none was found. And on day 41, they caught sight of the sun, and seeing his good work was done, then the good master gave his good work to the slave. It had been his good pleasure to save. And a place was prepared, and they gathered up there all the best of the earth and the air. And with fire and sword offered them to the Lord, in accordance with his holy word. Holy word. Holy word.
So, would you like to talk a little bit about this song? Tell me what kind of went into it. Maybe we can branch off from there into like the story of the album in general, because of the recording process being so unique. What do you remember about it? Your experiences?
Yeah, so, well, that song is a great example of kind of the surprise that I got when I listened back to it. So I take credit for nothing I'm about to say, so this isn't a boast. I was shocked at how great it sounded with the two microphones, like the depth and the character and the dynamic that they were able to capture with a high degree of cleanliness, so it was, it's
a personal experience. It's almost like 3-dimensional.
It is.
To me. Yeah.
It really is. And, so the way, and I think it's funny because it's just one of those things where, I think as technology and recording techniques progress, you kind of, terms get redefined. And so when I tell people, oh yeah, we did it live, they're like, oh, cool. And then they're like, oh, and so then you'd go back and you'd like punch in, and I'd be like, no, you don't understand. Mm-hmm. It's like, there were no separate tracks. There were no, it was literally 2 microphones. It was like, that's it. So
So it's all, there's no overdubs at all.
No
it's
overdubs
straight
whatsoever.
From the, that's beautiful, man.
It's all 100% live off the floor. No digital, no
plugins, right?
No
I was talking
plugins,
to
none of
Omar
that
before you
stuff,
got here, and he was saying that he basically just used an old Lexicon reverb unit.
Reverb.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it. And
now let me ask you this: how did that, like, and knowing that going into the sessions, I guess this is in one day or several days, or
well, it was so. One of the tracks we ended up using was from a rehearsal, so it was a few months older. The rest of it, and one of the things that was a learning thing for me, we did over a period of 3 days, over a weekend, and that was a mistake. I think if I it's not that I think that the songs came out badly. I'm proud of them. The amount of angst that I subjected myself to by doing it that way could have been very easily avoided if we had just simply recorded as we went. It's like I look back on it and I was like, we had everything right there. We could have easily just done one of these, a song a week or whatever,
right,
until we were happy with it.
So you put a deadline on yourself.
Well, again, it's the problem is that the goalpost kept moving, ultimately for the better. But remember, the initial idea was we were all going to take off our shoes and sit around and strum in my dining room.
Yeah.
And so, which is in Ridgeville, which is a hell of a haul for a lot of these guys. And so I didn't want to have to, all right, we'll come out again.
Right. So you
whatever.
I was going to, you were going to bang for your buck.
And I had this whole vision in my head of how it was going to be like, oh, we're going to film it and we're going to do this and it's going to be this vibey thing. So we did end up getting some visual from this, but there came a point where, first it was, well, I don't want these guys to have to come all the way out to Ridgeville to rehearse. Omar, can we just do it at Fairweather? He's like, yeah, absolutely. So then we're at Fairweather, and after a few weeks of that, everybody's like, maybe we should just do it here. And why don't we just do it here? It'd be kind of silly.
Isn't that great how that works, though?
Yeah.
The best idea comes out,
Totally. I wish I had taken it a step. I wish I had connected those dots in my head, but there was just a part of me that was like, well, no, this is how we're doing it. So, So anyway, I'm stupid is the short version of that. The amount of pressure that I felt was, let me put it to you this way. I'm really glad to have done it. I don't ever want to do that shit again. I would never want to do, not in that way.
Right.
I would, maybe if it were like in a more of a one-off, or, where we could kind of take our time with it.
Oh, okay.
But the amount of pressure that I felt, I was joking with Omar. I was like thinking about putting on there, production and, mental health, assistance from Omar, because he really had to talk me. And honestly, dude,
he really believes in the album, by the way.
He does. And I'm so grateful to him. They all do. And it's really gratifying that they're so happy with it. Honestly, when we got done, and this is kind of getting ahead of things, but I had lost all perspective. I didn't know if it was total bullshit, and I just basically had like a minor kind of meltdown about it. I couldn't listen to it for like a year.
Wow.
It was like a year, and I was like, I just couldn't. I was I completely fucked that up.
I don't mean to pry into your mindset there, but what was it about? What was it that was keeping you up at night?
Well, imperfections on my part. There were like some vocal things that.
But you had to nail it live too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
That's the thing.
Asking a lot of yourself.
Right. Exactly. And I knew that if somebody in the room was going to fuck up, it was almost certainly going to be me. Right. You know what I mean? And so. And I knew that here are these guys that, God bless them, they're donating their time and their talent, and they've put all this effort and energy into it, and they've got their shit dialed in. And then my voice would crack, and what do you do about that? It just happens, it's one of those things. But it happens in the third verse of a 3-verse song, and guess what? You got to go all the way back.
It just keeps accumulating that pressure. Right?
Yeah. And And I will say that, you know, another thing that I realize now in retrospect is, having said all that, it's not like I think, and Omar can correct me on this, I think the most takes we did of anything was like maybe 6 takes, which was only like one song. The rest of them we tended to get in about 3.
Cool.
And then some of them, there's a couple of them that are first take right off the rip.
Great.
But so it's not like it was like a just total shambles or anything. But I don't know, man. And it's like you build up and build up and build up, and then it's done, and everybody's gone, and it's all over, and you're left there, and you're listening to this, and you're like, I have no idea. I don't know. Is this garbage? Is it good? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. And you can have people telling, my wife, God bless her, she's, you know, for years now, been going, put out the fucking record, Malin. Put out. Nobody gives a fuck about the sibilance on the whatever, you know.
So let me let me go back and play John Picard's question for you, since you're answering it right now.
Oh, okay.
Why do we have to wait so long for that last album? It was so good.
I'm sorry, JP.
Man, every song on this album is pretty tight, in my
thank
view.
you.
And the one that I really kind of like resonated with a lot was the song called "Shelter of Arms." There's some really great lines in there, and I really kind of picked up on some of the poetic elements of it, especially the alliteration that I found in like some of your lines, like "pick your poison" and "chorus of cowards." I mean, how much of this is like things that you studied in a school and kind of applied, or are you just like in the sound of the words? I mean, what is going on as a lyricist here? I like with that song in particular, I didn't. Well, first of all, that's an older lyric. I think the initial first draft of that lyric was like in like 97 or something. Oh, wow.
So it's been floating around a long time.
That's cool.
And then it's another one of those that, you know, would wind back in the notebook over and over again and kind of crop up from time to time. But so I never would sit and say like, you know, I think I'm going to throw in some alliteration. It's kind of like, it's more like, I don't know, I can't think of a great analogy, but it's like a muscle you kind of train, and then when you need it, it's just kind of there.
You have a tool there for
exactly.
you. Okay,
and it just comes out, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's, yeah.
Let's hear a little bit of that song.
Okay.
That's okay with you.
If the thieves and the liars should welcome you into their trust, would you pull out your memories and secrets and blow off the dust? Would you polish them brightly, promise to give them away? Them like diamonds to someone who's willing to pay. When the pick of your poison has left you so hollow inside that your bones are left floating in whatever's left of your pride. Lessons and my voice gets ugly and hoarse, will they carry me gently, or will they eject me by force? You're just running in place in a race for the shelter of arms. Cowards scream along with the alarm, and that look on your face is the last thing that you'll never see. And there's no way of knowing never be.
All right, so that was Shelter of Arms. You gave me permission earlier when we were discussing all this to kind of talk about, some of the ones that I liked. Is Tipping Point. We've all been in that place. I really resonated with that song the day I heard it. It's just an honest and moving song. Let's listen to that one and then talk about it for a second.
Okay.
I don't know why I think about cashing in and checking out. I don't know what there is to say, or why my mind is bent that way. I guess I got myself to thank, when all the poison that I drank submerged for such a long, long time floats to the surface of my mind. I left the door open today, afraid to close it all the way. Afraid when I got home again, I might not get back in. There's a time when not enough twists itself into too much. A time when everything you lack starts seeping through the cracks. And there are good days in between, but it's hard to know just what they mean, or if the happiness is worth another lonely night on earth. I let the lights burn out today, sat and watched it fade away, with all the secrets that I keep. I sang myself to sleep. I sang myself to sleep. I sang myself to sleep. I sang myself to sleep.
So, kind of what went into that song in particular? Is there a story to that, or is there some,
There is. That's
Okay.
one of the ones that that does have a very specific. I can point to something, and forgive me for kind of dancing around it a little bit because I don't want to upset, my kids if they hear this or anything, or certain members of my family, or anyone. I don't want to upset anyone. Well, some people, but so that was how do I say this? So back in 2009, there was sort of a convergence of aspects of my life. I was working a lot, way too much. I was playing out a lot. I was drinking a lot. I was on a cocktail of uppers and downers to try to kind of keep myself, because literally it's like I would have to be at work at like 5 a.m. And in an effort, it was slightly misguided, but it came from a good place. I was a new father at the time, and my daughter had been born the year before, and I was trying to go to school because ultimately I wanted to get out of all that. But in an effort to do that, I was carrying way too much of a load. And this is all a really long way of saying that there was a colossal kaboom, and I'll leave it at that. Okay. There was just a big, dramatic kaboom. And the kaboom was mostly looking back on it, I think it was probably primarily sort of an unconscious kind of like, I really think my brain kind of just flipped the switch and said, no more. Lay down. Right. You're not doing this anymore. Yeah. This is not working. Yeah. And this is obviously what it's going to take because you're not going to stop, And so I got some help, and have been, working with it. Anybody that if you've got it, it's like, it's not, I don't know anyone personally that like has mental illness where they ever like, and I'm totally fine now.
Right,
you know,
right,
it comes and goes, and it's sometimes are better than others.
It's work. You
It's
put
work.
the work in.
You put, and yes, you do have to put the work in. You got to tend that. You got to keep an eye on that fence all the time, because it's always pieces of it are always in danger of falling off. Anyway, that's what the song is about, and so I wrote it shortly after that, and I was playing with Ryan Bonner at the time. He plays in Sideshow Americans, Broken Speakers.
Okay. Right.
He's played with a bunch of people. He's awesome. He's a great singer, great songwriter, great guitarist. He's a fucking whiz in the studio. He's the real deal.
Okay.
And at the time he was working toward a record, and so we were kind of gathering material and working on material. And that was something that kind of came out. We were recording at a church, and like doing pre-pro at a church, and I just had some time. I loaded a piano, and that just kind of came out. And that was actually a late addition to the record. There was another song that was actually going to be the flagship song of it that we just never really got it to my satisfaction, mostly because of me. I wasn't satisfied with my approach to it, but so I was like, I had done a version of it for National Suicide Awareness Day, so I did like a video, and I just did it on acoustic, and I got a really big reaction to it. A lot of people were saying,
that's great.
Whatever. Yeah, it was very gratifying. And so I kind of decided, I think I want to do this. And so I got Whit to play the piano on it instead of me. So that things improved.
Yeah, he sounds wonderful.
Drastically. Yeah, it's really, that's
moving.
Really, like so simple, and just he's one of those guys that can light it up when he needs to or when he wants to, but he also has such tremendous restraint and taste, and he's very respectful of he's a singer too, so he knows like leaving lots of room and that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm really proud of that song. It's one of my favorites on the record, and I'd have to say so far I've probably gotten the most comments about that.
Oh wow.
It's one of the things that, as a lyricist, I'm really proud of is that with the second or the first chorus, rather, the bit about I left the door open, afraid to close it, afraid I couldn't get back in. To me, that was like as close as I could get to a crystallization of somebody who maybe doesn't experience that kind of thing, that kind of anxiety or like depression or whatever.
To kind of explain it to them.
This is what it feels
Frame
like.
it, if you will.
Yeah, this is what it feels like. It's like just that kind of like, it's just, that's the kind of the thought process. And
I understand your attempt at trying to connect with people on that, because I was saying, I've had anxiety issues myself, and it's one of those things where it's really hard to communicate what that's like.
It is.
And people don't always want to hear that.
No, they don't.
They don't believe you or whatever, and it can cause even more frustration and more anxiety. It's like a snowball. So,
totally. Yeah. So it's so I was really glad to get that on there, and it's definitely. I got one of the nicest things anybody has ever said to me about a song, Bobby Hogg from Reckoning,
right,
and many other things. When I posted that thing of the guitar version of it on social media, he contacted me, and he was like, "Man, that thing at the end where you do that kind of hum line over the end," he was like, "That's so fucking pretty, man." And coming from Bobby,
Nice.
I was like, was like, shoot me now. All right, I'm done. That's good. It's a success. So that was really gratifying.
Let's move away from the album now a little bit.
Please.
Please.
Jesus.
So where is Malin Wagnon going next? What's your next moves? You got the album out that you've been sitting on like it's an egg. It's a chick now. What's next?
A thoroughly rotten egg.
I did not mean that.
I know. I did though. So I do have a couple of ideas. one of the things I've really learned from this is just kind of like what we were talking about earlier, just kind of like, just do it, just, make it happen. There's so many tools that are available right now. And ultimately, the things I have learned that I have to respect the opinion of people that I respect. Like my wife. My wife is really, Kevin is like a, she would downplay this, but she sings harmony on the record, actually.
Oh, cool.
The one other thing, that's the Skies for Flying. She sings a harmony part on that.
Great.
And I think she nailed it. She's a great harmony singer, and she's got exquisite taste in music. And for a non-musician, like a non-player, her taste is really immaculate. And I've learned that I really have to trust that her and other people, if there's something really glaringly wrong, they're probably going to tell me.
That's
you know
great.
what I mean?
That's good.
They're going to be like,
those
hey,
are real friends and family there. Yeah,
he might want to hit that shit again.
Yeah,
That's not quite. And so I've just been like, hey, let's try it. So I'm working through. I've got some acoustic demos that I just recorded on my phone, and so I've been sort of playing around with polishing them up, and whatever, the online, one of those programs. And so I might put that out, I definitely want to do, I know that for my next full release, I want to do something that is a little more rockin'. Most of what I do now is like electric guitar trio stuff.
Right, I've heard Unity Gain. That's your band you're talking about, right?
That's one of them. What
other bands are we in?
One of my failed fucking attempts at a band name. Damn it, nobody likes that either.
That's a good band, man. You and Alan, and who's the drummer for that?
Well, it's kind of depend. Really, I mean, just to be honest, Unity Gain is our name when we play at Bounty Bar.
Oh, I see.
That's kind of what I was like.
Yeah, I've got some Bounty Bar-ish
I was
bands
like,
too.
maybe we'll. So it's different people. Right now, I play a lot. I play with Alan and Dennis Ware. Primarily, it's them, and then occasionally there'll be some other folks who'll step in. We play every Wednesday night at the Dinghy on the IOP, which is such an amazing gig.
Wow, I haven't ever been there, actually.
You would never suspect it.
Okay.
And honestly, when I started playing there, I was like, ugh, it was just some money,
Right.
But we've been playing there now for getting on 3 years.
Nice.
And
That's
just
quite a
such a
residency.
and it's such a cool. It's such a cool thing. And, we do some originals. I'll send them some songs and we'll try that. And we do a lot of covers. And honestly, I've just been enjoying getting out and playing guitar. And I don't have, one of the things that bothers me most is the tendency of artists to look down their nose at covers. And I get it. And I don't want to, there's no shade implied in this. When you're talking about wedding bands,
right,
which I've done, I'm not certain, I know you have, event bands, we've done that stuff,
keeps the lights on.
And there are some people who are fucking great at it. One of my favorite little pocket musical moments that I go back to is a wedding. My wife did some wedding design for a while, and we were doing this wedding somewhere, I don't know, somewhere around. And Bobby Alvarez, I guess it was Plain Jane. It might have been the whole Plain Jane
whole band,
guys.
back in the day.
I think, yeah. And dude, he lit that room up. And I mean, the joy, just the pure joy.
I know what you're saying. Some people just have it in their blood. Yeah.
I mean, it was like,
it's performance.
And I was like, I would kick you in your fucking dick if you look down at what this man is doing. And go, oh, nice covers, man.
Right.
Because, I mean, and forgive me, but the way I look at it was Sinatra a cover?
Right.
A cover guy?
Yeah.
Was Billie Holiday? Covers? She's just doing covers, man. My thing
it's a frame. I keep coming back to this framework idea that you've been planted in my head. Actually, that you're operating within a known framework.
That's right.
But it's your take on it that's the thing, and that's up to you. And if you don't see it that way, then you're missing out the artistic point of it all.
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate in that I just I heard Zach on the first episode talking about the Charleston set list.
Right.
And I've played those songs, don't get me wrong. I don't play them regularly at all and never have. I've been very fortunate in that I kind of found a way to say, I don't want to play Use Me, but I will play Grandma's Hands. You cool with that? You know what I mean? It's so there's ways that you can kind of navigate those waters and sort of compromise. You compromise with the audience. And if you're doing it well enough, usually they're on board. And I just look at it as music. And to me, it's like, I have zero interest in getting it right. I could care less about like, are you playing it right? You know, what is right?
Mean like like the way the album is.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, that's not the way it goes. Right. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating to me than when and it's almost always, it's like you'll have one person in the band, everybody else is doing this really cool, unique kind of take on something, and then there's one guy's like, no, it goes like this, you know, and you misplaced the eighth, and I'm like, fuck, shut the fuck up.
Nobody gives a shit.
Nobody cares.
The audience definitely doesn't give a shit.
They
just want energy and a smile on your face.
Exactly.
And acting like you give a shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the way that I can give a shit is by approaching it that way and playing with people, like when we played together at Drop In.
Yeah.
At Drop In.
Yeah. With Stratton.
Yeah. I'm not one of those people that is like, of course, there's going to be exceptions to this. By and large, if a drummer is taking it somewhere that I don't necessarily expect, that I'm not used to, let's do it, man.
Right.
Let's go. Let's see. Let's change it. Is it slower? Is it faster? Is it halftime? Is it what? Well, fuck it. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. What's the worst that's going to happen?
The world is not going to end at the Bounty Bar if you fuck up the chorus.
That's right.
The first time you play it.
That's right. And you and you just might learn something, and you might find a whole new dimension to this song that you weren't aware of before. And that to me is the real beauty of the Charleston scene. And, you know, that's what, it's almost like, it's like jazz adjacent kind of.
Yeah.
It's almost like a jazz approach without necessarily being strictly formally jazz, you know what I mean? And that's, to me, that's what makes Charleston special, you know? I wish that there was more of an appetite for original music, right? Of course, but that ain't just Charleston, man.
No. You can still sneak your original music into these shows.
And you should, yeah.
You should.
Totally, yes. Yeah, do it.
Throw these people a bone and they appreciate it.
Exactly.
They walk away with like an experience as opposed to the experience.
Right, yeah.
Or
exactly,
whatever, however you want to see it. But
it's, I think that there's, I don't know. I guess I'm just not so precious about it. I mean, look, the bottom line is, for most of us, if we're talking about success in any kind of terms that by any metric we would have used when we were 25 years old.
Right. Which was like a whole unrealistic expectation for me personally.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be an Iron Maiden when I was 15. I thought I was going to be in Jane's Addiction when I was 19.
Totally.
Or whatever.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like, I can quit and I can do this. And it's like, dude, that's probably not going to happen, man. It's just probably, I mean, like, look, anybody, there's nothing that confirms my doubts about the existence of a divine power more than the fact that sex brews are not millionaires. Why are they not millionaires? Why aren't they? I mean, why are they not? They should be everywhere.
Yeah. Actually, after interviewing them, I'm even a bigger fan than I was before. After listening to their like explanation of what they're doing. That's beside the point.
Totally, no. I mean,
that's to your point. Extremely talented, great music, great artist, great concept. The whole thing.
It's funny. Yeah. It's badass. It is hook. It's visual as fuck. I mean, it's like the whole enchilada.
Yeah, they got it.
And if they're not, if they haven't. It's like, come on, really? I mean, there's no justice.
They were actually giving you pancakes for fuck's sake. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. They're feeding you. They're meeting your physical needs.
Maybe you should try some pancakes, man. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm thinking more like tamales, or maybe some of my Texas roots come out.
Amen.
I don't know if it'd be cool to toss tamales.
Well, if you ever decide to do that, man, I want to do this show all over again with a camera. Well, that too. So, some last thoughts here.
Okay.
What are we? Anything that you would like to say to the listeners? Hopefully, by the time this show comes out, we'll have 1 million listeners at least. So
yeah. Well, if you want to buy "Suffering," the album we've been talking about, it is available on Bandcamp for the low price of $5 American. Cheaper than a pack of smokes and somewhat less dangerous. And then on, in January, so we're talking right now in December. So in January, I'm going to release it to all the platforms and allow myself to be a part of that whole fuckery that all that is,
I don't know how there's a way around it anymore, man.
I mean, it's
there
like,
really
so I've reached out for counsel online to people to say, like, tell me, am I wrong? And everybody's like, you're wrong. Just put the shit out. Just, okay, all right, I'll just put it out. So,
and please keep putting those videos out. Those are great.
Well, that's the other big thing, is that we are sitting on a ton of footage. And so Alan Schmidt, that played on the record, his wife, Natasha, actually does film editing and production. And she was the one that filmed a lot of the stuff here. So she's going to be working with Alan and Omar on kind of putting together a little... We're looking at initially some one-offs, but I'm hoping maybe we could do like maybe even a mini doc about it. Just why not? I mean, we got it there.
You should, man. So, I mean, it's definitely a unique album.
Yeah, and it's a unique process. So that way we can prove. We can be like, see. Yeah, I'm not lying.
And I've been telling everybody, I was like, it's changed my mind about the studios a little bit, to be honest with you, because I've been a more is more kind of guy, and I'm backing up.
Yeah,
taking a break.
Yeah, sometimes it pays to put on the brakes.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll have to leave it at that for today. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Malin for taking some time out of his busy schedule to talk with us today. If you like Malin's music, then please visit his Bandcamp site and buy his new album. Also, don't forget to go to his shows and support his projects, as many of my audience are likely musicians themselves. You know how important it is for us to support and appreciate each other's work as much as possible. So please do your part. Thanks to everyone out there who's listening and sharing the show. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. Goodbye for now.